Hello, everybody. Welcome to Medicine and Science on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pellavita. I'm going to be your moderator for today, but of course, the person who's going to be leading the conversation will be Dr. Michael Patmos as soon as he arrives. But in the meantime, we're going to be discussing, obviously, the West Nile virus, and we have our panel, which is Rick Rosner. Rick, welcome to Medicine and Science. And without Dr. Patmos, of course, this could be a real short meeting.
Yeah, because we don't know anything, but I did look up some stuff.
Okay, what do we have on this West Nile virus? I mean, it hit the news, and I remember it was around a long time ago. And the thing is, the news recently is Dr. Fauci received it, and also somebody actually died in Vermont. So, what do you know about this West Nile
Based
virus?
on 2 minutes of reading Wikipedia, I know that it lives in birds. Mosquitoes bite the birds. And then they go off and bite either people or other birds, and that's how you get it, from mosquitoes. I just wanted to talk generally about pandemics because, like, the 20th century seems like the century that killed everybody with world wars. But, they had plenty of pandemics too. This century so far seems to be we haven't had any world wars, and we've had this one big pandemic, and with the potential for other ones to start. Like Ebola is spread by blood. If there's an Ebola outbreak, the World Health Organization swoops in and stomps it down and quarantines everybody, and which you can do because it's spread by blood, and it's hard to that makes it more. But if it ever becomes aerosolized, able to spread the way that COVID does, then the world is effed. Because it's got COVID kills, I don't know, like 1/4 of 1% of the people who get it now, maybe 1/8 of 1%. Ebola kills, I don't know, 80% of the people who get it.
No, it's worse than that, Rick, because I was just looking at the CDC, and they said the Ebola virus, Sudan virus, and the Bundibugyo virus are 3 viruses responsible for the most large outbreaks in Africa. And the Ebola virus is the deadliest, and without treatment, up to 90% of the cases are fatal. So it definitely is up there in terms of fatality, because 90% would be a significant amount. And that was as recently as May of this year and everything. So definitely the Ebola is out there, and there's even some vaccines that they're working on around Ebola and everything. Because one of the articles I just saw came out in August 22nd, and apparently Merck, because there's a deadly outbreak of the Ebola virus that spread throughout the Democratic Republic of Congo in 2008. And Merck's then unapproved vaccine was quickly deployed to help address the crisis and provide protection to hundreds of thousands of recipients. And now, 4 years after that epidemic ended, a new analysis offers a clear picture on the vaccine's real-world effectiveness. For the study, the researchers looked at data collected from those treatment centers and everything, and they're saying that it looks like it had about a 84% effectiveness rate against the virus in people who were infected 10 or more days after the vaccination. So that looks like a pretty good success rate from what I'm reading and everything.
So, but the deal is that there are, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of people around the world monitoring viruses. And, the ones that are known to be very deadly, making sure we know where they are and making sure we know how they're transmitted. And if they look like they're about to develop a new horrible way of being transmitted, to come up with vaccines or a plan to really shut down the world. People in the US, depending on their politics, really bitch about how much the US was shut down in 2020 to fight COVID. If Ebola ever gets loose, the shutdowns we need, the martial law that would result, would make COVID look like, I don't know, patty cake. Like,
right. I totally agree with you on that. And one thing very interesting when it comes to these pandemics you're discussing, Rick, is that Bill Gates actually had a TEDx talk several years before this pandemic took place on COVID-19. If you listen to his talk, very interesting. He said,
Oops, your voice dropped out.
Your voice dropped
Oh.
out.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can see you now.
Okay. This is Bill Gates before COVID-19. He said pandemics will be big in the world because of international travel. It used to be, even during the Black Death, people would be confined in their own little city. So they basically are isolated. So you could kill them off in a city, like in Florence or Siena, but it wouldn't spread rapidly through movements. Today, because of international travel and flights, the minute there is a disease in a place like Wuhan, China, it spreads rapidly throughout the entire world. So one problem that people face today that they didn't face years ago is we intermingle all over the world on a continuous basis. So if an Ebola outbreaks in somewhere in Africa, it can spread all over the world.
Yeah, we live next to Universal Studios, the theme park, and we go there every once in a while, and it looks like the United Nations there. People come from all over the world for a once in a lifetime vacation. And we went to the buffet at a hotel next, and we're like, when we saw what was going on there, we're like, nope, we're just not doing this because everybody's using the same tongs. It's super crowded. You got people from around the world. We're still in the middle of COVID, and they wanted $150 for a Christmas buffet. So between all of that, we like bailed out on that. But yeah, the Spanish flu of 1918 was the first like pandemic based on ease of travel, because World War I was just wrapping up, and you had millions of people in transit from the European theaters of war back to America and back to the rest of Europe. And that meant that, I don't know, 50 million people died of that stuff, which was
a lot
huge.
of people. But I have a question for both you, Rick and Nick, because there was a major issue and it dealt with the pandemic. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing one of mine laying around. It probably needs to be tossed because it's probably germ filled by now and everything. But there was a number of people that were wearing masks during the pandemic. In New York just recently arrested somebody because they have a new mask law and everything, and they arrested I think an illegal immigrant because they were wearing a mask. But apparently there are some folks that are part of the disabled community that are suing New York because of the mask ban, because they are claiming that it discriminates against disabled people or differently abled people, depending on which terminology you want to use, because some of those folks have to have a mask by the nature of what they are going through.
If you're immune deficient, you need to wear a mask. And it's a weird law that I guess what the New York wants to ban masks because masks make it easier to anonymously do crime, I guess. Is that the deal?
That's what the theory is. But the thing is, in reality, I agree with the mask. It can actually help stop the transmission of diseases because especially, what is it, the N1 mask, whatever it is, N95, that it acts as a barricade between you and someone else getting it, which is one reason medical doctors use it. It is uncomfortable. I mean, when I went to Europe a couple of years ago during the pandemic, I had to wear masks all these places. It was uncomfortable. After a while, you kind of get used to it because and the studies that I saw were this. They said, well, it actually reduces the transmission like almost 83% that you won't get it if you and the other party wear a mask. It cuts it in half if you wear it and they don't. So what happens is that there's actually studies on masks that frankly, they do work. But the reason people don't want to wear it is people just, they're oppositional defiance disorder. You tell me to do something, I'll figure a way to tell you.
The only time it bugs me really is when I burp. So I'll let the burp out. I don't want to have my mask smell like dinner.
Yeah, but because people are traveling more, and even though I'm going to Spain, I go, oh well, that's really nice to live there and all that stuff. 9 million Americans live outside the United States right now.
You need to reach Miss, because apparently he's in the wrong letter or the wrong place, because he says I'm in the podcast, I think. So he's not in the podcast.
Well, he's in the wrong podcast. Can you send him this one, Mark?
Well, actually, I know what I'll do is since he's watching, we can actually put this link, as we've done before, on the chat, and then I'll put it in the chat, and then he can hopefully jump in and
Oh,
everything.
really? Okay. All right.
There's another
All right.
way to do this.
Yeah, okay, as long as you know different ways to do that. But the thing is, when it comes to this West Nile virus, which Dr. Padmas says he's got some information on, the thing that gets me, it's transmitted by mosquitoes. Okay, growing up in Florida, tell me how you don't get bit by a mosquito.
So if Dr. Padmas is watching, if you will grab that banner, and I'll actually do it as a static as well. And that was because it's scrolling, so scrolling might not be all that effective. But if he'll grab this banner, then hopefully he'll join us and everything. So
ditto for LA. LA is the land of swimming pools.
Yeah.
And I think there's a task force. They're like swimming pool cops who go around and make sure that the pools in LA, somebody's taking care of them. That, like, say a house is vacant and it turns into like a green swamp. You can't have that, because then you're making a ton of mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And the thing is, when you have mosquitoes that are transmitting this is the reason, like I said, Dr. Fauci actually got the West Nile virus, and so did this person in Vermont, and the person in Vermont unfortunately died of West Nile virus. So all of a sudden, we're starting to see some mortality. What we don't want to do is turn into this, a pandemic, and all of a sudden it's all over the place. And this could be a big disaster, especially with mosquitoes, who are the transmitter. Now, also when I was a kid, people don't realize this, there was a thing called DDT. And what they used is DDT to destroy the mosquitoes. And in the Tampa Bay area, which I don't have behind me, I have St. Mark's in Venice, they sprayed the bejeevers out of the city of DDT. Unfortunately, it's carcinogenic. So what happens is that it killed everything, Rick. I mean,
it's still killing in California, because they when we figured out it was carcinogenic, they still had, I don't know, millions of gallons of this stuff. They put it in barrels and they sank the barrels off the LA coast.
Oh, really?
And,
wow.
And those barrels, are slowly rusting away, and then so DDT is still out there, like in the ocean.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous. But this is something that is a cause of concern. At least there's a yellow light on it right now. Oddly enough, though, the data that I've heard from Dr. Padmas, COVID-19 is still the leading cause of shock, or how you say awe, or basically deaths. And even today, there is all these anti-vax misinformation things that are going out there that are just troublesome. One of them said that because because people were taking the vaccine and it was highly dangerous, there's going to be mass amounts of people dying in the next 2 or 3 years. Well, now it's 2 or 3 years later, and the doctor.
I've been vaxxed 8 times, and I'm mostly fine. I think I don't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what. That's
what Lance says on our show.
Yeah. The Trumpy guy that I argue with on my pod TV show is very actually sincerely concerned that I'm killing myself with getting vaccinated.
Well, I sincerely think he's incredibly wrong.
Yeah.
The thing is, and I'll even go further. There was a vaccine I took also when I was a kid. It was called polio vaccine. I don't know if people remember it. And then they made it oral polio, which means you could take it without having to get an injection, which was a lot better. Today, people are getting polio right now in the Gaza Strip, and they plan on sending like 600,000 vials of polio. Can you imagine if you're I don't know why Dr. Padmas can't get in.
I just sent him the email, and he's not jumped on yet, but I just sent him the email again and everything. But hopefully he'll get in, because I just sent him.
Maybe some of the anti-vaxxers are keeping him out. But anyway, the thing is when it comes to the polio vaccine, if you didn't take it, you become paralyzed. Now there's some kids in the Gaza Strip who are paralyzed because they didn't take the polio vaccine. Seriously. And you start thinking, why would you want to not take something that what I saw when I was a kid, they not only got paralyzed, there were people in iron lungs because they lost their ability to breathe, and they'd have to stay in iron lungs. And from what I understand, again, Dr. Padmas would know better, once you get polio and you're paralyzed, it's not like they can inject you with something and reverse that.
No, and I've read that it's the muscles you use while you're sick with it that get burnt out.
Really? Okay.
so like if a kid is running around, doesn't know he has polio, he uses his legs a lot, he loses his legs. And
Yeah.
it's bad if you get it as an adult, like FDR got it as a grown man. My uncle got it. And like there are muscles that determine if you can get a boner or not. And I feel
Yeah.
like, you know, if you get adult polio as an adult and you know, and you can't control, you know, when you get a boner, like that
Right.
might be the end of your boners for the rest of your life, which is,
Yeah.
I think, horrible.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, that's what I'm thinking about polio. So they required, it was mandated, the school I went to, which was a parochial school, mandated that you take polio vaccine, mandated you take the MMR. And you know what? There was no argument, because if you did argue, they just kick you out of school and no one really cared. But no one argued about it. In other words, everybody took it there. We were grateful to have the vaccine. Okay. And instead today you have people that not only they argue about mandated that you take polio vaccine, mandated you take the MMR. And you know what? There was no argument, because if you did argue, they just kicked you out of school.
And
And no one
everything.
really cared.
About polio, I just pulled this up and everything. Apparently there are, and Dr. Patman probably knows better than I do about this, but apparently there are 34 countries. It looks like a lot of them are in Africa and other, maybe some of the Asian nations that are identified in the latest polio outbreak. And this was
Well, let's hear about West Nile, because we got the doctor.
Yeah, yeah. What are we doing about West Nile, or can we do anything about it? Transmitted by mosquitoes?
Hey guys, I am actually in. I had to go to my cell phone because I could not get
No
it.
one argued about it. In other words, everybody took it there. We were grateful to have the vaccine. Okay. And instead today you have people that not only they argue about mandated that you take the polio vaccine, mandated to take the MMR. And you know what? There was no argument, because if you did argue, they just kicked you out of school. There we go.
Okay, so, well, wait,
he disappeared again.
okay, but I mean, he's here. His phone is here.
Yeah, the phone is here, but we've got to see what he's got to say.
Yeah, we got to see what he has to say about West Nile.
Maybe he's adjusting on the computer or something along those lines. But yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know how you duck mosquitoes. Maybe you can move to Antarctica. You know, I don't know where you can.
Some people taste better to mosquitoes than others.
Oh, okay. So you want to make sure you don't taste good for the mosquito. Because mosquitoes are like everywhere. We have not eliminated them. And I think they would refuse to wear masks, and they would refuse to get vaccinated. So they're certainly going to be a big problem if they're transmitting drugs. Well, it looks like Dr. Patmos has disappeared again. It's amazing when technology doesn't work.
Well, he disappeared. There was another disease travel vaccine that has been approved and is available in 2024. And apparently it deals if you go to Brazil, and I'm not familiar with this. It's just on the computer.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear. Because I don't know how you duck mosquitoes. Maybe you can move to Antarctica. You know, I don't know where you.
Well, some people taste better to mosquitoes than others.
Oh, okay. So you want to make sure you don't taste good for the mosquito. Because mosquitoes are like everywhere. We have not eliminated them. And I think they would refuse to wear masks, and they would refuse to get vaccinated. So they're certainly going to be a big problem if they're transmitting drugs. Well, it looks like Dr. Patmos has disappeared again. It's amazing what technology.
He's here. Disappeared. There was another disease travel vaccine that has been approved and is available in.
So we've got a technical glitch.
Can you hear us, Dr. Patmos?
He's hearing stuff from 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. What he's doing is hearing stuff from 2 minutes ago, so he's waiting to hear and chime in and everything.
Yeah, I don't know what the issue is. We've never had this issue before, so it's hard to deal with. I cannot fix it on my side though, Rick. Okay, so it's impossible.
Well, it looks like we're being rude to the doctor, but it's really just stuff we said 5 minutes ago that keeps playing.
I know.
Well, he was playing it on his side. That's what it was. He was playing it on his side.
Yeah, but this is somewhere along the lines he needs. Well, this is one of the challenges with technology. Technology is great when it works, but when it doesn't, it's not so great. It just doesn't seem to work. Okay, well we may have to bring him back next week
Well,
listen to
getting
more.
together and everything, just really quickly, there's another mosquito transmitted disease because y'all talking about how mosquitoes work, but that's what I was saying because this apparently is in our southern border, and I'm gonna spell it because I'm probably gonna mispronounce it, but the mosquito transmitted, and it's spelled CHIK.
I can't fix it on my side, Rick.
And it's throughout the region.
It's impossible.
All right, but it looks like we're being rude to the doctor, but it's really just stuff we said 5 minutes ago that keeps playing.
I know.
But he was playing it on his side. That's what it was. He was playing it on his side.
Yeah, but this is somewhere along the lines needs.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of the challenges with technology. Technology is great when it works, but when it doesn't, it's not so great. It just doesn't seem to work.
Dr. Patmos?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, I feel terrible because I've been trying for 40 minutes to get in, and I can't. The link won't work. I'm now on my cell phone. It will not work. It may have had something to do with the tropical storm that just blew through. We did have a tropical storm that came through Hawaii a couple days ago, and maybe that did something to cell towers or something. I don't know. Do I have? I have 9 minutes left?
You can go a little bit fast, but go ahead and share what you got about West Nile virus.
Okay, so I'm going to fly through this. Okay, West Nile virus is made the news because of Dr. Fauci getting it. It's an interesting virus in that most people who get it are asymptomatic. Only a small percentage of people get really sick, and that's mostly older people. It is bad if you get really sick. It can lead to death and significant neurologic impairment, but it's mostly a fairly benign viral illness. That's very different than Eastern equine encephalitis, which now is in Massachusetts. Now, that's a rare disease, but it's 30% fatal, and everybody who survives ends up severely neurologically impaired. 2 counties in Massachusetts have suggested a nocturnal curfew, that people stay indoors after at dusk and dawn to avoid mosquito bites. And the LinkedIn anti-vaxxers have gone berserk, claiming that that's a draconian government overreach. It's a voluntary curfew. It's not a draconian government overreach. This is a disease, though rare, that is no treatment, no vaccine, 30% fatal, 70% survive left with profound neurological impairment. It is outrageous that Dr. McCullough on the McCullough Foundation LinkedIn profile condemned the recommendation by the Public Health Department as draconian. It is certainly not that. And with a disease that is that deadly, even if there's only 38 cases, that's not a lot of people unless one of them happens to be your child. Another comment came from Dr. McCullough the other day on the Alex Jones podcast was that the Mpox currently killing a lot of people in Africa, is a product of gain-of-function research. That is palpably absurd. That virus is active in the Congo and the West Congo. There are no labs in the Congo or anywhere in the continent of Africa capable of doing gain-of-function research. To suggest publicly that gain-of-function research is the cause of Mpox is outrageous, unprofessional, and that itself should be condemned. I mean, the only places in the world that do gain-of-function research are in the United States, in Europe, and in China. What is he proposing? That someone made this virus and transported it to Africa to kill Africans? How do they transport it? In checked baggage or in a carry-on? I mean, it's absurd that what Dr. McCullough said about that. That should be condemned. Another quick point. The business about the lab leak. I came upon some new information the other day as a result of a fantastic investigative journalist, Dr. Allison Netzel. If you don't know who she is, you should. She does amazing research. She found, and I put it on my LinkedIn profile, the Corona Big Book. What's the Corona Big Book? It's a book of talking points that was written for Donald Trump back in 2020 by a political strategic consulting firm called O'Donnell and Associates. In this Corona Big Book is point by point by point of all the things to tell Trump to say, to attack Fauci, attack CDC, attack World Health Organization, and blame China for everything to get the blame off him. It's all political. So everything these anti-vaxxers are saying comes right out of this Corona Big Book. It's fascinating when you start to think about the nexus between that political communication strategy, the Corona Big Book, and then the Great Barrington Declaration, which was a sort of a parallel strategy employed by the Trump administration to try to, end the lockdowns and get the economy, because he didn't want to lose the election. So he made up the Great Barrington Declaration, had his friends make it up, and the Corona Big Book. So the one last thing I want to get in here before I stop is the Great Barrington Declaration. They got a lot of play. It was signed on by a lot of people, some of them who don't even exist, but it's been totally discredited. And here's why. When the Great Barrington Declaration was published, that's the recommendation that said that just let the young people get it. They're not vulnerable. We'll get herd immunity. Just vaccinate the elderly. Well, when that was written, the death toll in the United States was well under 300,000. Here we are 4 years later, and the death toll is well over 1.2 million, basically quadrupling the death toll. I don't know by what measure a quadrupling of the death toll indicates a successful strategy. My, simple point of view, quadrupling the death toll documents failure. So that's all I have for you today.
Hey, Dr. Pat,
use mosquito repellent and wear long sleeves, and if you're going to go out and it's going to be in a mosquito-y area.
Dr. Pat,
that was fast.
There was a mosquito-based virus in Latin America as well. Do you know anything about that? Because I heard that there was a spike in this disease. I think it begins with a C, and I was probably about to mispronounce it, but it seems like it's a spike of a virus that is mosquito-based in Brazil and other parts of Latin America.
Yeah, there's 10,000 viruses, and there's another one. I have never heard of it before. There's so many of them, and they're constantly evolving. So I don't know about that one. I'll have to research it and comment next time.
My wife and I wake up with bites. Should we be sleeping with our windows shut?
I personally, I would put up screens. I mean, you live in Florida, it's a tropical area. Just like in Hawaii, it's tropical. We, have window screens. There's parts of Hawaii of Maui that are wetter than others, but on the wet side over by Hana, there's dengue fever over there, dengue virus, and it's recommended that you put a screen on your windows. Yep.
Okay. The thing I heard was this one, which is relatively new to me, the equine encephalitis, Dr. Patmos. Should we be concerned with that? I don't like the idea of 30% dying and huge disability.
Equine encephalitis is very rare. It's been reported in Massachusetts and I think a couple of northeastern states primarily. There's only been 38 cases ever identified, as far as I know, in the United States. It's a very, very rare disease, so people shouldn't be, terrified about it. But if you get it, it is really bad. And so I just think that prudent common sense, if you're going to be out in the woods, out hiking somewhere, you're in a backyard and there's mosquitoes buzzing around, get some, backwoods off and spray yourself, wear, a long sleeve shirt and long pants. And if you live in one of those counties in Massachusetts, I think Worcester and Plymouth County, I believe, if you live in those counties, I would recommend abiding by the recommendations of the public health department. Just stay in at dusk and dawn when those when those mosquitoes are out and feeding. It's a bad disease, though it is very rare.
Yeah,
how much should we be concerned about?
Well, I can barely hear you guys.
Yeah, Dr. Patmos, how much should we be concerned about ants? I live here in North Carolina, as does Nick, and I know that there are a number of folks that sometimes are worried when they're going out because even though they're small critters, they can bite you as well. So how concerned should folks be about the various types of ants, whether they be red or black ants or things along those lines?
I never like to just comment off the top of my head. That's not a good thing to do. I research everything I talk about before I talk about it. I check on up to date. If you want to know about ants, let me research it and I'll give you a correct evidence-based summary based upon current best evidence published in the medical literature. I don't just expound off the top of my head. I think that's how people get into trouble.
Amazing. Okay. Well, it's amazing because some of your colleagues don't do that. They just do off the cuff and they throw things out there and they don't seem to care. But that's just my opinion. Latest on the legal front. a physician that prescribed hydroxychloroquine or whatever the heck that was is now being sued for malpractice and lost their license because as they were trying to purportedly use it as a cure for COVID-19, and it created severe damage to the person that they gave it to. So the attorneys, like I said, they'll eventually jump in this quagmire of these anti-vaxxers and the people with these phony ideas.
Nick, was that the case in Nevada?
Yeah, actually, it was the case.
Yeah, that was a terrible case. There's a doctor in Las Vegas, a female physician,
right,
who prescribed hydroxychloroquine, and the guy died, a young guy with a family.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Right,
unfortunate. The bottom line is that the vaccine prevents severe disease and death by 95%. If you're unvaccinated, you're 525% more likely to die. God's sakes, vaccinated. Prevent death. That's what doctors do. Don't send them home in a pine box. Doctors' number one goal.
And apparently don't inject hydroxychloroquine into their system. Apparently that's not
that's an oral drug anyway. No, hydroxychloroquine has a purpose. I prescribe it for what it's intended for, which is in autoimmune diseases. It's very useful in certain autoimmune diseases, but it's not for COVID. There's no evidence that it works, and it's wrong to give it. When we have a vaccine that will prevent death with 95% efficacy.
Yeah,
right.
But due to the statistics of COVID, people think it works because if 99.5% of people survive COVID, then a certain percent of those people will take something stupid and think they saved themselves when really it was statistics that saved them.
It really depends on which patients you're seeing. If you see patients in the ICU, that's one subset. See patients in the ER, that's another subset. See patients on the medical floor, that's another subset. See patients in the outpatient setting, that's another subset. So all of these subsets have different statistical outcomes. And so people are confusing. The doctors who think that ivermectin works, they're seeing outpatients who were not very sick to begin with and who were going to get better anyway. So they attribute that, it's basically post hoc ergo, propter hoc. It's basic sixth grade science. Association does not prove causation.
Well,
sixth grade. That's sixth grade science.
A lot of the anti-vaxxers doing science, they didn't even do well in sixth grade. They were the back of the class doodling.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry we had technical difficulties. Okay. I would be happy to reschedule this and go into more detail and go slower on the things I brought up, but I threw a lot out in just 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty good. But what we can do is we can see everybody next week. We'll have another topic. Hopefully West Nile will not spread any further. And apparently, from my understanding, Dr. Patmos, one person died of West Nile in Vermont.
Yes, that can yes, there is a mortality rate from it. It's such a difference. It's amazing. These viruses are so different. West Nile is largely asymptomatic and mild, rarely deadly. Equine encephalitis is mostly severe and deadly and leaves permanent. So there's such differences in these viral infections as far as their prognosis and so forth. You have to this is why people who are not trained in this stuff shouldn't be spouting off. Unless you're an infectious disease doctor or you got training in infection control, just listen. Just listen. Don't opine as an expert in areas in which you're not an expert.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to stay away from mosquitoes, but
that's a good idea. I don't like mosquitoes. They carry a lot of stuff. I don't want them feeding on my blood. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, we want to thank Dr. Patmos, who is board certified in internal medicine, for his quick discussion on the West Nile virus, and of course our panel with Rick Rosner and Mark Lee. And we want to thank our viewers around the world. And you did notice we did show polio being a problem around the world, which is interesting, and also people getting it in Gaza Strip. So maybe next week we'll discuss polio. I always thought that was gone, but apparently that's not true. Polio is around the world, and that'll certainly be something interesting for our world viewers. And until next time, thank you for Medicine and Science. We'll see you then.